If you think Star Wars is just what happens in the movies, think again. These storied villains from that faraway galaxy have way more going on than you'd think.
The Emperor has long loomed over the Star Wars saga. Sometimes he's manipulated events from the shadows. Other times he's stepped onto the screen and shocked audiences with his crazy powers. From his days as an apprentice to his appearance in Episode 9, here's the entire Emperor Palpatine story. Sheev Palpatine, the man who would become a Sith Lord and the Galactic Emperor, was born on the planet Naboo. According to the novel Darth Plagueis, young Palpatine first discovered the temptation of the dark side of the Force while collecting Sith artifacts. As a young man, he met Plagueis. The encounter led Palpatine to kill his entire family and dedicate himself to becoming Darth Plagueis' Sith apprentice. As a result, Plagueis gave him the name of Darth Sidious. Like Plagueis before him, Sidious carefully maintained his non-Sith identity as Sheev Palpatine, and he became active in politics on Naboo. He rose in rank to become a senator after secretly arranging the assassination of his predecessor, representing Naboo in the Galactic Senate. He remained in that position for years, methodically working to accumulate more power, gaining strength both politically and in the dark side. While Palpatine gained popularity in the Senate, Darth Sidious formed alliances in the darker corners of the galaxy. Appearing as a mysterious cloaked figure who primarily communicated via hologram, he contacted and manipulated groups who were dissatisfied with the Republic, such as the Neimoidians and their trade federation. When it was finally time to make his bid to become Chancellor of the Republic, he encouraged the Neimoidians to blockade Naboo, creating a crisis that would provide him with a political opportunity. During the same period, Palpatine took custody of a young Zabrak and had him raised in the ways of the dark side. The Zabrak became Sidious's first Sith apprentice, Darth Maul. Since nobody knew that he was the one behind the Trade Federation's blockade of Naboo, Palpatine was able to exploit the incident to consolidate his political power. When Chancellor Valorum failed to take strong action to defend Naboo, Palpatine encouraged Naboo's Queen Amidala to call for a vote of no confidence in Valorum, which in turn led to a new election. Being the senator from the planet that was in crisis, Palpatine was perfectly positioned to win the election and become the new Supreme Chancellor of the Republic. Taking the top office in the galaxy was a huge step in Palpatine's rise, but it would still take years of simultaneously consolidating his political power as Chancellor while also stoking the galaxy's conflicts as Darth Sidious before he would be able to gain absolute power. He would also need a new Sith apprentice, as Darth Maul was defeated and seemingly killed by Obi-Wan Kenobi as the Naboo crisis was drawing to a close. After the defeat of Darth Maul, Palpatine's new Sith apprentice was the elderly aristocrat Count Dooku, who acted as his proxy in leading a separatist movement of multiple systems that were dissatisfied with the Republic. When the separatists were found to be building a vast droid army, Chancellor Palpatine was granted special powers to deal with the threat. As it turns out, using other proxies, he'd already commissioned an army of clone troopers, and his new powers enabled him to command that army to go to war against the separatists. Not only was Palpatine's power increased, but the Republic ended a long period of peace to become a dominant military power in the galaxy, a big step closer to becoming an empire. Outwardly, the Chancellor pretended to be reluctant to take on the burden of greater power and lead the Republic into war, but of course, it was all part of the long game he'd been playing since the beginning. 3 years later, Chancellor Palpatine arranged his own capture by Count Dooku's separatist forces. He was rescued, as he knew he would be, by Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin Skywalker.
I sense a trap. Next move? Spring the trap.
At Palpatine's urging, Anakin killed an already defeated and literally disarmed Dooku. From then on, Palpatine began actively working to seduce Anakin to the dark side of the Force and make the powerful young Jedi into a new Sith apprentice. Anakin was concerned for the health of his pregnant wife, Padme, and Palpatine planted the idea in Anakin's head that becoming powerful in the dark side was the key to ensuring that she survived the pregnancy. Ultimately, of course, Palpatine didn't care about Padme at all, and it was Anakin's turn to the dark side that led to her death. In his new Sith persona as Darth Vader, Anakin Skywalker would become the most powerful ally Palpatine had ever had, and a key part of his plan to eliminate the Jedi and rule the galaxy. When the Jedi finally realized that Palpatine was a Sith Lord, it was far too late. A vicious battle with Jedi Master Mace Windu brought about a fearsome change to Palpatine's physical appearance. While there has been much speculation, it's unclear whether Palpatine was disfigured by Force lightning as he claimed, or whether he was revealing what had already been his true appearance. In any case, the evil within him came to the surface and his face got all gross and pasty. Ironically, his disfigurement enabled him to turn the Senate against the Jedi who'd attacked him. He took the opportunity to seize the power he'd worked so long to bring within his grasp and declared himself Emperor of the Galaxy. Although the Galactic Senate would remain in place for years to come, the Republic had become the Empire, and with the Jedi eliminated by the clone troopers, there was nobody left to challenge Palpatine's power. Almost 20 years later, Emperor Palpatine dissolved the Galactic Senate permanently because the completion of the Death Star enabled him to rule through fear. Commanded by one of the Emperor's most trusted and ruthless operatives, Grand Moff Tarkin, the Death Star was a mobile space station with the power to destroy entire planets. As a demonstration of its power, Tarkin obliterated the planet Alderaan, home to key members of the Rebel Alliance who were working against the Empire. Leia Organa, adopted princess of Alderaan and secretly the daughter of Anakin Skywalker, was forced to watch the destruction of her planet from the deck of the Death Star, where she was being held prisoner at the time. As these events unfolded, Emperor Palpatine remained unseen in the background, leaving Tarkin and Darth Vader to do his dirty work aboard the Death Star.
I recognized your foul stench when I was brought on board.
Charming to the last.
This turned out to be particularly fortunate for him because he was nowhere near the Death Star when Luke Skywalker managed to blow it up on behalf of the Rebel Alliance. Darth Vader was able to escape the destruction, but Tarkin and the other military leaders on board all died. Following the destruction of the Death Star, Emperor Palpatine and Darth Vader both learned the identity of Luke Skywalker, and they became determined to find him. As Vader searched for Luke and the rebels, Palpatine remained in the Imperial capital of Coruscant and communicated with Vader via hologram. Palpatine suspected that Vader wanted to turn his son to the dark side and overthrow Palpatine with his help. Killing your master after you found your apprentice was Sith tradition after all, and it was exactly what Palpatine had done to his own master. For his part, Palpatine hoped that either Luke would kill his father and then replace him as the Emperor's apprentice, or that Luke would die, thus eliminating the threat and maintaining the status quo. Eventually, Vader would confront Luke on Bespin, but he failed to convert, capture, or kill him. He did, however, reveal himself as Luke's father, ensuring that Luke would eventually seek out Vader by choice, which would only put him in the path of the Emperor. With construction underway on the second Death Star, Emperor Palpatine decided to take a more active hand in the Galactic Civil War. Arriving on the new Death Star to oversee its completion himself, the Emperor carefully laid a trap for the Rebel Alliance. He knew they were planning to attack the Death Star before it was finished, so he made sure that when the rebels arrived, the half-built space station's weapons system would be fully operational.
Fully operational Death Star!
What enabled the rebels to ultimately win the day was the efforts of a rebel team on the surface of the forest moon of Endor, where the new Death Star was in orbit during its construction. Led by Han and Leia, these rebels were eventually able to shut down the shield generator that protected the incomplete Death Star, enabling rebel ships to destroy it. Ironically, Darth Vader had allowed the ship holding the rebel party to approach Endor, even though he sensed Luke Skywalker's presence among them. That was the first of Vader's betrayals at Endor that led to the Emperor's downfall, but it was far from the last. As the Emperor had predicted, Luke Skywalker soon sought out Darth Vader on Endor. The young Jedi surrendered, and Vader brought him before Palpatine on the new Death Star. The Emperor could sense that the emotional Luke was veering closer to the dark side, and he and Vader encouraged Luke to give himself over to his emotional turmoil. Palpatine seemed ready to die if it would cement Luke's turn to the dark side, but he was even more enthusiastic about the possibility of Luke killing his father and taking Vader's place by the Emperor's side. Ultimately, Luke resisted the dark side, casting his weapon away. At that point, Palpatine revealed that, like the armed and operational Death Star, he wasn't as weak and helpless as he seemed. The Emperor blasted the young Skywalker with Force lightning from his fingertips, preparing to kill him even as the Death Star's weapons killed Luke's allies. At the last moment, however, Darth Vader was unable to stand by and watch as the man who'd ruined his life tried to murder his son as well, and Vader grabbed Palpatine and hurled him down a seemingly bottomless shaft within the Death Star, killing the Emperor. Darth Vader died immediately afterwards, and Luke managed to escape just as his allies finally destroyed the second Death Star, which was a decisive victory against the Empire. It's debatable in the end whether Palpatine died on the Death Star or not, but if he did, he managed to come back pretty quickly. He never exactly says how, but cloning seems to be involved. He hid for decades on the planet Exegol in the unknown regions. He created the figure of Snoke, the original Supreme Leader of the First Order, to be his puppet until it was time for the rebirth of the Empire as the Final Order. He also built an entire Sith Empire on that hidden planet, complete with a vast fleet of Star Destroyers that would be able to crush the Resistance and once again establish his dominance over the galaxy. When he eventually revealed himself, he recruited Supreme Leader Kylo Ren, who had already killed Snoke and taken over the First Order. Palpatine promised Ren even greater power if Ren would fulfill his wishes, and for a time, Kylo seemed to agree. Somewhere along the line, old pasty Palp had himself a kid, and eventually his greatest concern became his granddaughter, Rey. He'd been searching for her since she was born, but she was a grown woman before she learned about her connection to him and journeyed to Exegol to destroy her grandfather and end his threat to the galaxy. Then she learned that his death at her hands was part of Palpatine's plan. If she killed him in anger, she would turn to the dark side, take the spirits of him and the other Sith within her, and become the new Empress. When Kylo Ren, having turned away from the dark side, arrived to help Rey, Palpatine drew on both of their life forces to restore himself, regaining mobility and his trademark yellow eyes. He used his vast power to shoot the Resistance fleet out of the sky with those fancy force fingers, until a weakened Rey managed to redirect the lightning back onto him, basically making Palpatine kill himself. As for Emperor Palpatine, is he dead for real now? The Skywalker saga is supposed to be over, so it's nice to believe he is. But he might have just retreated to another planet and another body, waiting for a future decade to try it all again. His ambition, after all, is stronger than death. Ever since his debut in The Phantom Menace, Darth Maul has become one of Star Wars' most iconic villains, but his tale stretches far beyond that one movie. From his sinister origins to his final duel, this is the story of Darth Maul. The child who would eventually become Darth Maul was born on the planet Dathomir, a world controlled by a matriarchal order of dark-side force users known as the Night Sisters. Maul grew up in a tribe ruled by the ferocious mother Talzin. Talzin planned for her 3 sons to become Night Brothers, the all-male warriors who protect and serve the Night Sisters. But all that changed on the day that Darth Sidious came to Dathomir. As part of his plan for galactic domination, Sidious wished to learn more of the dark side from the Night Sisters. After working with Mother Talzin for a time, Sidious was impressed by her abilities and offered to take her on as his new apprentice, but he never did. Instead, Sidious kidnapped one of Talzin's sons and vanished from Dathomir. He not only sensed great potential in the boy, but also wanted an apprentice that he could control completely. Whatever this child's birth name was, it's now lost to history, as Sidious renamed him Maul. Sidious's brainwashing of Darth Maul was successful, and he grew up to be a formidable Sith warrior. Due to his tremendous skill, Maul was also impatient for the time when he would finally get the chance to fight a Jedi. But because Sidious didn't want to reveal the Sith Order's re-emergence until the last possible moment, he forbade Maul from doing so. Despite this, Maul soon learns of a Jedi Padawan named Eldra Kaitis who has been captured by a criminal cartel. Maul decides to ignore his master's orders to remain hidden and travels to the auction where Kaitis is being sold as a slave. After a series of misadventures, Maul manages to rescue Kaitis from captivity, only to then challenge her to a duel. In the end, even though Kaitis fights valiantly, Maul defeats and kills her. After Darth Maul returns to his master, he suspects that Sidious will be upset with him for his disobedience. But Sidious congratulates him, telling him that the Sith were born in defiance and that Maul has embraced the very nature of their order. Darth Sidious asks his apprentice if his bloodlust has been sated by this, and Maul tells him that it has not. Sidious replies, "Good." After years of planning, Darth Sidious finally sets in motion his plan for galactic domination. Unfortunately, Queen Amidala of Naboo and 2 troublesome Jedi begin mucking up Sidious's carefully laid plans. Sidious dispatches Maul to track them down, and after a brief encounter on Tatooine, they finally come to blows in the royal palace on Naboo. Since Maul is outnumbered, he decides to separate his 2 foes, knocking Obi-Wan off a ledge so that he can fight Qui-Gon uninterrupted. By the time Obi-Wan manages to reunite with them, Darth Maul has stabbed Qui-Gon through the chest, killing him. Filled with rage, Obi-Wan fights more fiercely than ever, and through some tricky, force-assisted acrobatics, manages to chop Maul in half and send him tumbling down a seemingly bottomless shaft. Kept alive by the sheer force of his hatred for Kenobi, Maul survives his defeat on Naboo, crawls through the underbelly of the palace, and finally makes his escape. Maul's upper half ends up getting shipped off with the trash to Lotho Minor, a planet that is covered in an endless junkyard. There he manages to replace his lower body with some scavenged robotic legs, but he's forced to live in dire circumstances, with little food or water and no way off the planet. Years later, back on Dathomir, a Night Brother named Savage Opress learns from his mother Talzin that he has a long-lost brother who was taken from them by Darth Sidious. With the help of Talzin's force sensitivity, Savage ends up tracking down Maul, but the man he finds is so consumed with rage and so damaged by isolation that he is practically an animal. Worse still, vast swaths of his memory are totally missing. Savage decides to bring him back to Dathomir. Once there, Mother Talzin uses her mysterious dark-side magic to begin restoring Maul's fragmented mind. Finally reunited for the first time in decades, Savage Opress and Darth Maul decide to join forces and travel the galaxy together in search of power and revenge. Along the way, Maul starts referring to Savage as his apprentice, teaching him the ways of the dark side. They also start recruiting allies, such as the criminal organization Black Sun, the radical Mandalorian revolutionary group Death Watch, and the forces of Jabba the Hutt. Maul and Savage decide to name their new criminal network the Shadow Collective. As Maul is building the Shadow Collective, he gets a few opportunities to cross lightsabers with Obi-Wan Kenobi. The first occurs when Maul sets a trap for the Jedi Master on the planet Raydonia, but Kenobi manages to escape before Maul can land a killing blow. Later, Kenobi tracks Maul and Savage to the planet Florum, but this time it's Maul who flees after Kenobi cuts off one of Savage's actual arms. During this time, the Shadow Collective accomplishes a great deal. They even manage to organize a coup on the planet Mandalore, allowing the Collective to seize control of the planet's government. During his time on Mandalore, Maul also manages to obtain a new weapon, an ancient lightsaber with a black blade known as the Darksaber. Soon after taking control of Mandalore, Maul lures Obi-Wan Kenobi into a trap and captures him. Although he fails to hold his sworn enemy for long, he does strike down and kill Satine Kryze, Kenobi's close friend and romantic interest. Maul's time as the ruler of Mandalore is short-lived. Soon after he takes over the planet, Maul's doorway is once again darkened by his old master, Darth Sidious. Sidious had learned of Maul's survival from Obi-Wan Kenobi and had now come to put down his former apprentice once and for all. At first, Maul tries to convince his old master that he conquered Mandalore as a gift, with the hope of becoming Sidious's apprentice once more, but the Sith Lord quickly sees through Maul's lies. Maul and Savage Opress then fight Sidious together, but the two are separated, and Opress proves no match for Sidious by himself. He is quickly struck down by the Sith Lord. Maul then returns to the fight, but fails to muster the rage he needs to defeat Sidious. Instead, all he feels is grief. As a result, Maul is distracted and unfocused, and Darth Sidious is able to easily overpower him and take him captive. Soon after, Maul finds himself in prison, face-to-face with Sidious's new apprentice, Count Dooku. Dooku subjects Maul to torture, attempting to extract information about the Shadow Collective. Of course, Maul doesn't offer up much. Shortly thereafter, Shadow Collective forces are able to rescue Maul from prison. Unfortunately, by this point in time, the Collective's days are numbered. Being an enemy to both the Jedi and the Sith has really left Maul stuck between a rock and a hard place, and he finds his allies abandoning him left and right. Maul does achieve one brief victory when his forces capture Count Dooku and hold him prisoner. However, despite Maul's attempts to contact Sidious and use his new hostage as leverage, his old master claims he has no use for either of them anymore. He tells Maul he is free to kill Dooku. Undeterred, Maul then pivots strategies. He and Mother Talzin attempt to convince Dooku into forming an alliance with him against Sidious, but Dooku refuses, stating that he just doesn't believe an alliance against Darth Sidious could ever succeed. Maul and Dooku are then interrupted by an attack on their supply outpost. It seems that a group of Republic soldiers, led by Obi-Wan Kenobi and Mace Windu, have found them. Given this new development, Dooku feigns an alliance with Maul, and the two Sith Lords are able to fight their way through the Jedi and escape. Maul then returns with Dooku to his homeworld of Dathomir in order to lay low and seek the counsel of his mother. While he is there, however, Dathomir is attacked by Darth Sidious's forces, led by Darth Sidious and General Grievous. Maul manages to rally his Shadow Collective forces to fight back against the invasion, but it doesn't make much of a difference. During the battle, Mother Talzin and Maul duel Grievous, Dooku, and Sidious. Talzin then uses her powers to push Maul away from the fight in an attempt to save him. Moments later, she is killed by Grievous. Maul briefly tries to charge back into the fray, but is dragged away by his Shadow Collective warriors and convinced to flee the planet. Eventually, Maul and those loyal to him return to Mandalore, where they remain in hiding. Driven into the shadows, Maul and the Shadow Collective re-establish ties with the Pike Syndicate, Black Sun, and a criminal syndicate called Crimson Dawn. Around this time, Maul begins experiencing visions of the future, specifically of the rise of Darth Sidious, the fall of Anakin Skywalker, and the coming of Order 66. Hoping to prevent this by killing Skywalker, Maul engineers the Siege of Mandalore as a trap for the Jedi. Unfortunately for Maul, it's Ahsoka Tano who leads the Republic forces on Mandalore. When they first encounter each other, Maul warns Ahsoka of the imminent rise of Darth Sidious, but he's quickly forced to flee. On his second meeting with Ahsoka, Maul once more forewarns the rise of Darth Sidious in the Empire. Ahsoka offers to work with Maul to stop Sidious once and for all, but Maul refuses due to his belief that the Republic and Jedi are too weak and corrupt to be saved. Maul then asks Ahsoka to join him to defeat Sidious, which she seriously considers, until Maul reveals that he has seen visions of Sidious making Anakin Skywalker his new apprentice. Ahsoka accuses Maul of lying, lashes out, and the two come to blows. After a hard-fought duel, Maul is defeated by Ahsoka. Rather than let him die, however, she takes Maul into captivity and prepares to return him to Coruscant for judgment by the Jedi Council. With Maul in confinement and the Clone Wars entering its final stages, Ahsoka and her clone army begin the journey back to Coruscant, where Maul is to be kept prisoner. They never make it. As Ahsoka's ship hurtles through lightspeed, Sidious issues Order 66, making the clones turn on the Jedi and solidifying the transformation of the Republic into the Galactic Empire. Ahsoka isn't part of the Jedi Order anymore, but she's still a hero with a lightsaber. Two of them, actually, making her a big target. Thankfully, Ahsoka has Maul around. In need of a distraction to get the clones off her tail, Ahsoka frees Maul from his restraining device and sets him loose to cause havoc.
You don't understand. I'm not here to team up with you. I need a diversion, and you're it.
He more than delivers. As Ahsoka and her friend Captain Rex work on their escape, Maul takes the fight to the clone army and sabotages the ship's hyperdrive generators, sending the vessel careening towards the surface of a nearby moon. With a big crash imminent, Maul flees to the hangar bay where he crosses paths with Ahsoka again. A brief struggle ensues, but Maul is able to commandeer a ship and escape, leaving him free to regroup elsewhere in the galaxy and forcing Ahsoka and Rex to fend for themselves. During the reign of the Galactic Empire, Maul continues to rule the Shadow Collective, exerting his control over a number of criminal organizations across the galaxy. Many years after the end of the Clone Wars, he makes his final reappearance. While the young rebel Ezra Bridger is exploring some old Sith ruins on the lifeless planet of Malachor, he encounters a stranger in a cloak. The stranger explains that he came seeking a Sith holocron in a nearby temple, but it takes two Force users working together to open the doors to the temple, so he can't do it alone. In order to help lift the extremely heavy stones, the stranger teaches Ezra how to make his Force power stronger by tapping into his emotions, something that Ezra's own mentors have forbidden. Under the stranger's guidance, Ezra is able to retrieve the holocron. The two then reunite with Ezra's teacher, the former Jedi Padawan Kanan Jarrus, who immediately recognizes the stranger as Darth Maul. As you might imagine, it isn't long before Maul betrays them, and even though Maul is defeated and forced to flee, Ezra finds that his time spent with Maul has forever changed him, giving him a taste of the power the dark side can bring. Maul later reappears to make Ezra an offer. Maul seeks the answer to a question, and to get it, he needs another Force user to operate a pair of holocrons with him. Doing so will grant the pair a shared vision, giving each participant the answer to any question they ask. Ezra asks for the key to destroying the Sith, and Maul asks where he is. They get the same answer, a desert planet with twin suns. Eventually, Ezra is able to put together that Maul is seeking the legendary Jedi Obi-Wan Kenobi, who is living in hiding on the planet Tatooine. Ezra travels there to warn Kenobi and persuade him to join the rebellion, but Kenobi refuses.
The rebellion needs you. We need you to defeat the Empire.
What you need, you already have. Unfortunately, you seem to be letting it all go.
Maul then arrives and he and Kenobi duel one last time. Their battle is quick and Kenobi wins by slicing his enemy through the chest. As Maul lays dying, the two old foes talk one last time, and Kenobi reveals that he is on Tatooine to guard the Chosen One. Safe in the knowledge that he would one day be avenged and Sidious would be destroyed, Maul dies in Kenobi's arms.
Darth Vader's story has been incorporated into every aspect of the Star Wars saga, from films to shows, comics, and books. So now it's time to chart his entire course from an enslaved boy on Tatooine to the inspiration for the galaxy's current reigning big bad. This is Darth Vader's story explained. 4 decades before he walked onto Princess Leia's ship as the embodiment of the evil Empire, when audiences got their first glimpse of Darth Vader, Anakin Skywalker was born on Tatooine as the child of a slave woman named Shmi Skywalker. When the Jedi Master Qui-Gon Jinn asked Shmi about the boy's father years later, she simply told him that there wasn't one, leading Qui-Gon to deduce that Anakin had been conceived by the Force entities known as midichlorians. Though it hasn't been conclusively stated, it's heavily implied in both the film and the comics that Anakin's conception was caused by the manipulations of the Sith Lord Darth Plagueis and his apprentice Darth Sidious. Anakin showed tremendous intelligence and skill from a very young age, and was so adept at mechanics and repairs that he built the protocol droid C-3PO before he turned 10. He was also a skilled pod racer, making him a rarity as human reflexes were usually too slow to allow them to survive in the sport, which drew the attention of a pair of Jedi Knights. After learning about Anakin's curious parentage and testing his midichlorian count, Qui-Gon became convinced of Anakin's potential as a Jedi. With Qui-Gon's encouragement, Anakin won his freedom in a pod race and accompanied Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan to Coruscant, sadly having to leave his mother behind. Qui-Gon took Anakin before the Jedi High Council, convinced that the boy could be the chosen one who would bring balance to the Force. Masters Yoda and Mace Windu were wary of Anakin's age and his fearful demeanor, but Qui-Gon pleaded for the opportunity to train him anyway. In the Battle of Naboo, Anakin piloted a starfighter against the Trade Federation, proving that his Jedi reflexes and skill as a pilot extended beyond pod racing. After the battle was over, he discovered that Qui-Gon had been killed at the hands of Darth Maul, and Obi-Wan made a vow to train Anakin himself, in keeping with his lost master's wishes. The High Council consented, and Anakin became a Jedi Padawan. Anakin spent the next decade training as Obi-Wan's apprentice, and proved himself as an immensely skilled Jedi who also had a tendency towards recklessness. As a young man, he reconnected with then-Senator Padme Amidala on Coruscant, when he and Obi-Wan were tasked with guarding her life after an assassination attempt.
We will find out who's trying to kill you, Padme. I promise you.
We will not exceed our mandate, my young Padawan learner.
While Obi-Wan sought to track down the people behind the attempt on Padme's life, Anakin stayed behind as her personal bodyguard and escorted her back to Naboo. The Senator and the Jedi soon fell in love, but Anakin's darker tendencies intruded as he became tormented by visions of his mother. With Padme at his side, Anakin traveled to Tatooine, where he learned that a now married and freed Shmi Skywalker had been abducted by Tusken Raiders. Anakin tracked down the Tusken tribe and his mother, who died in his arms after seeing him one last time. In a rage, Skywalker slaughtered the entire tribe and vowed to Padme that he would become powerful enough to prevent the people he loved from dying, beginning his descent into darkness. After the Tusken Raider incident, Anakin and Padme left Tatooine to rescue Obi-Wan, who'd been taken prisoner by Separatists. Unfortunately, they, like Obi-Wan, were soon captured by Separatist leader, Sith Lord and former Dracula Count Dooku, and sentenced to death in a gladiatorial arena. As they tried to fight their way out alongside the Jedi, reinforcements arrived in the form of a clone army that had been discovered by Obi-Wan. Under the leadership of Yoda and Mace Windu, they defeated the Separatists in what would become the first battle of the Clone Wars. With the battle still raging, Anakin and Obi-Wan engaged Dooku in a lightsaber duel, but Anakin's recklessness got the better of him when he tried to fight Dooku alone. The Sith defeated Anakin, cutting off Anakin's right arm before being defeated by Yoda. In the days that followed, Anakin and Padme were married in secret, with the droids C-3PO and R2-D2 serving as witnesses, because the Jedi Order forbade such romantic attachments. As the Clone Wars gained intensity, Anakin was promoted to Jedi Knight and became a key general for the Republic. His abilities and confidence grew, but so did his recklessness and, by extension, his fear of losing those he loved. In an effort to help, Yoda suggested Anakin could learn how to let go of people by taking on an apprentice of his own who would one day ascend beyond his training. He was paired with a young Padawan named Ahsoka Tano, and while the two initially had friction due to Ahsoka's feisty nature, they ultimately became friends.
Master, if you've taught me one thing, it's that nothing is easy when you're around.
Ahsoka rose in prominence alongside her master as the wars went on, until she was framed and arrested for a bombing at the Jedi Temple that was actually carried out by one of her friends. Ahsoka was expelled from the Jedi Order, but Anakin and Padme believed in her innocence, and were ultimately able to gain evidence that led to her acquittal at trial. Though she was offered readmission to the ranks of the Jedi, Ahsoka was disillusioned after her trial, and she chose to leave the Jedi behind. Witnessing the treatment of his former apprentice only served to further frustrate Anakin, who was beginning to lose faith in the Jedi High Council. By the end of the Clone Wars, Anakin's growing abilities and his purported status as the Chosen One caught the attention of the Sith Lord Darth Sidious. Sidious was manipulating the entire war from behind the scenes, via his dual roles as a Sith and as Sheev Palpatine. Yes, that's his first name, the Chancellor of the Republic. Palpatine finally made his move on Skywalker in the waning days of the war, urging him to kill Dooku in cold blood in the midst of space above Coruscant. Anakin complied, decapitating Dooku, and Palpatine continued grooming Anakin as his agent by appointing him as his emissary to the Jedi Council. The Council submitted to the Chancellor's wishes, but they refused to grant Anakin the rank of Master, further inflaming his frustrations, though Obi-Wan continued to champion him.
I have trained you since you were a small boy. I have taught you everything I know, and you have become a far greater Jedi than I could ever hope to be.
Unfortunately, the denial of Anakin's knighthood, coupled with his frequent visions of Padme, who was then pregnant, dying in despair, led Palpatine to finally reveal himself to Anakin, convincing him that he could stop the death of his loved ones by using the dark side of the Force. Conflicted, Anakin first revealed that Palpatine was a Sith Lord, and then helped Palpatine kill Mace Windu in the hopes of learning how to save Padme. Though distressed by his betrayal of the Jedi, Anakin submitted himself to his new master, who in turn dubbed him Darth Vader. Palpatine dispatched Vader to the Jedi Temple as part of his Great Jedi Purge, where Vader brutally slaughtered any Force user in his path, including the children. Vader then journeyed to the fiery planet Mustafar, with Obi-Wan and Padme having learned of his betrayal following to stop him. Enraged by the idea that his old master and his wife were working together to betray him, he used the Force to choke Padme into unconsciousness, then engaged Obi-Wan in a duel. Ultimately, Obi-Wan gained the high ground in the fight, severed both of Vader's legs, and left him near a lava ditch to die. Palpatine saved his apprentice, then outfitted him in a life-preserving suit of armor, transforming him into the half-machine Vader we all know and love. Palpatine also told Vader that he'd accidentally killed Padme and their unborn child back on Mustafar. In truth, Padme had died of a broken heart, but not before secretly giving birth to Anakin's twin children, Luke and Leia, who were hidden away from him as they grew up. Vader then took his place at Palpatine's side as the Republic became the Galactic Empire, although he still harbored a desire to bring Padme back at all costs. 2 decades passed as the Empire continued to rise, and Vader continued his efforts to eradicate the remaining Jedi. He also had to deal with Palpatine's schemes to encourage his competitive nature by drafting other warriors who could serve as Vader's replacement at the Emperor's side. It was during this era that Palpatine gifted Vader a mask belonging to Momin, an ancient Sith Lord and artist, whose spirit still possessed the mask. Vader used a gateway opened by Momin to search for Padme's spirit and bring her back, but instead he found darkness as her form disintegrated before his eyes. Vader came out of the experience convinced that both Padme and Anakin Skywalker were dead, and that his past no longer mattered. While Vader pursued his own interests, a revolutionary movement formed, blossoming into the Rebel Alliance, a group which sought to wage all-out war against the Empire. In those early days, Ahsoka Tano joined the Alliance, dueling Vader to be what he believed to be her death. The rebellion gained an unexpected advantage 19 years after the fall of the Republic, when it managed to seize the plans to a planet-destroying battle station called the Death Star. Vader led the pursuit of the rebels and managed to capture one of their leaders, Princess Leia Organa, who, unbeknownst to him, was his long-lost daughter. After destroying Leia's adopted planet of Alderaan, Vader then had an unexpected encounter with an old friend. When a small group that included Obi-Wan Kenobi infiltrated the Death Star to rescue Leia, the Master and the Apprentice decided it was time for a rematch. This time, there was no high ground, and Vader killed his old teacher. But the rescue was successful, and the rebels were clear to use the Death Star plans to attack. In the ensuing battle, Vader almost killed rebel pilot Luke Skywalker, his still unknown long-lost son, who would go on to destroy the Death Star and give the Alliance their first big victory. After learning of Luke's true identity through his agents, Vader finally tracked down his son at a hidden base on the ice planet Hoth. While the rebels escaped, Palpatine revealed his knowledge of Luke to Vader, and the two began working to bring the younger Skywalker over to the dark side. Vader captured Luke's friends, Han and Leia, using them as bait to lure Luke away from his training with Yoda, who had been living in hiding for the past 2 decades. The plan worked, and Luke arrived on Bespin to battle Vader and save his friends. Vader defeated the young Jedi in a lightsaber duel, severing Luke's right hand in the process and revealing that he was Luke's father. Instead of joining the dark side, he decided to fall to his death instead, but was rescued by Leia in the Falcon. Vader returned from Bespin to help oversee construction of a second Death Star, planning with the Emperor to use the new superweapon as bait to ensnare and defeat the rebellion by making it look more vulnerable than it was. Luke re-emerged on the forest of Endor, allowing himself to be captured and taken to the Death Star. He was determined to redeem Vader, just as Vader was determined to convert his son by bringing him before the Emperor. During the duel that followed, Vader sensed in his son's mind that he had a sister, Vader's second child, and he used this knowledge to draw out Luke's anger. Rather than giving in to the dark side though, Luke tossed his weapon aside. This didn't sit well with Palpatine, who responded by using Force Lightning to electrocute Luke. Watching his son die, something suddenly switched inside Vader. Weak and wounded, Vader managed to throw his master into the core of the Death Star. With his dying breath, Anakin Skywalker returned from the dark side and told his son that he was right about him all along.